Hello, this is Roger Hughes from Real Intent in Sunnyvale, California. Today we're doing the Meridian CDC iDebug GUI introduction. This is just a short training video to introduce you to how iDebug works. For full details on all commands used, you do need to reference the extensive documentation. There are also multiple PowerPoint slide decks that can be referenced by all customers on different topics. And on complex subjects such as iDebug, there may be many short training videos focusing on specific points that will be made. In this particular short video, we're going to simply look at an introduction to iDebug, look at the structures of the windows and the displays. We'll cover some aspects of how to waive different violations, and we'll also very briefly cover how to invoke iVision source and schematic view. There will be additional iDebug videos on setting view criteria for searching for specific violations, as well as additional videos on iVision details. So the iDebug GUI in 2017A, it allows for a database view. So everything in Meridian CDC is a database populated with comprehensive CDC analysis data. And that database can be viewed via iDebug to give you a specific view. You don't have to necessarily view all the data that's in the database, but you can look at particular selections of the data so that you can view what's relevant to the issues that you want to debug. The spreadsheet-based view gives you different elements that you can look at. For example, if we look over here, there's a table. You see that the word policy is highlighted. So this is displaying the policy. In a separate video, we'll talk about the view criteria setting that allows you to do specific searches. But in the policy, you will see setup checks listed, you'll see analysis checks listed, and you can click on different particular rule violations, which are categorized in terms of different severity levels of error, warning, review, and info. And if you're clicking here on W async reset flops, you'll see a list of all the violations, and you'll see here that there are 12 pages of violations that can be looked at, and each individual one will give you some additional information. Here we've shown you a particular way you can actually set the status to basically edit things, so I can actually decide whether I want to change a particular violation to be waived, or I can defer it for later analysis, or I can mark it as to be fixed. So this gives us a good ability to view the different elements quickly. Now, in terms of invoking iDebug, it's very easy to invoke. You just simply type iDebug in any directory where Meridian CDC has previously been run. There's also a command line interface mode, which can be invoked using iDebug-CLI. Now, there are some useful options. You can use -I to invoke a script upon opening iDebug to set up certain views, certain criteria. You can also use a -E to basically run a script on exiting to automatically save any view criteria that you've created, to automatically save any rule status changes out into a particular file, so that those are saved if necessary, so that additional engineers can work with the project directory and re-invoke iDebug with those particular changes. Now, normally all changes done through multiple sessions of iDebug are all saved into the particular project directory. And it is possible to redo that project directory to basically force iDebug to do different things from the very beginning. But normally, you'd want to record all the changes from multiple session invocations so that you can roll through things quite quickly. Now, if you want to look at the user guide and reference manuals, you can actually type iDebug-doc, and that'll open up the browser and automatically load the HTML docs. Also within iDebug, all the documentation is viewable via various menus as well. Now, in terms of the default policies, so basically the default policy normally is the new policy. All new violations appear in the new policy, and there's different categories of SDC, NV-lint, MDC setup checks, MDC analysis checks, etc. And each of these different check categories basically has a set of different severities of error, warning, review, and info. So whenever different rules are moved from one policy to another, to be moved from new to the to be fixed policy, or to the deferred policy, or to the waived policy, the rules are still visible. You don't ever delete violations. Violations can only be waived. So as a result, every single violation that was originally observed as new can always be viewed quite readily and quickly using iDebug, which is a very powerful capability. Now, initially, the default status, as I mentioned, is new. Typically, you'd use the to be fixed category to basically mark a violation as needing to be fixed. You might annotate that violation in the GUI with a particular name, saying that Roger's going to fix this, or Bob's going to fix this, or Bill, or Jill, or somebody, to basically look at it. If there's something that's too complicated and you want to look at it further, you might mark it for deferred. And waiving is typically when you know that a violation is just noise and it can be safely ignored because of additional design knowledge that you might have for that particular design. Tool waived is when a violation has been automatically waived by certain commands in the tool. It might be because of a block that's been labeled as being a safe block, and so that will automatically be tool waived. Or you might have various rules that have been marked as with set mutex signals, which again could automatically be waived in an appropriate manner. In the new class, rules are basically labeled as new. This is the default normal start point. And as you roll through, if you want to change something to be fixed, then it will appear down in a different bucket called to be fixed. I use the terms buckets and bins interchangeably, but effectively the to be fixed bucket or bin, or the deferred bucket or bin. So each of these different status categories are effectively buckets or bins. You can label a set of different things with multiple selections with a shift and select to basically be labeled as waived, and then waive them. You can also waive entire tables. So for example, if you select here an entire table and there's a whole bunch of W controls here and you want everything to be waived, then if you click the entire table marking up here, then you will be able to click on waived and the entire table will be waived with a warning that will pop up, as you can see on this slide, where it'll confirm that you want to do things. Actually, this particular warning is for the erase all button that says to erase all the particular changes. Now, in terms of iDebug schematics and source code browsing, that's all done through a thing called iVision that provides schematics and source code viewing. It displays the design hierarchy, the schematics, cone schematics of a particular violation, and source view of a particular violation. All of these are searchable and expandable. The cone view is typically limited to showing 3 drivers by default. The reason for that is that you want to illustrate multi-driver problems, and there are some violations that might have many tens or hundreds of drivers, but you don't want to take the time to calculate all the paths. So the idea is to just initially show 3 drivers, and that selection can be expanded at any time. Typically the iVision display, and I'll show you a live demo of this in a moment, but the iVision display typically shows in the hierarchy view the module name and the instance name in the design tree. And you can actually see the schematic view quite quickly. There are many things you can set up within iVision, and we'll have a more detailed tutorial on iVision as a short tutorial later. So let's have a look at some of the capabilities that are within the overall tool. So let's look at iDebug. And here I'm bringing it up on a previous very simple example so you can quickly review it. There's some setup checks and there's some other violations. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to select, just for example, this S-no reset. And although it's a valid violation and shouldn't really be waived, I'm going to actually mark it as, let's mark it as to be fixed. So if I do that, you'll see that what's happened is a new category has been introduced over here on the left, labeled as to be fixed. And that setup check has vanished from the new area and is now a setup check in the to be fixed bucket. Let's look at, for example, these glitches. If I take one of these signals here and I basically say, let's mark that as waived, then what will happen is I've now got that particular one glitch labeled down here as waived. If I go to async reset flops, for example, then I might decide that, suppose there are many different things here. I may not want to select all of them. And I might say, let's examine these later. I would say, let's defer these. So what I want to do is I could select everything by the control click, or I could click on a particular click on any top of any column and you'll select the entire column. That's one way of doing it. But if you've got multiple pages, then you'd want to be able to select different things. And if you want to select for the whole table, one way of doing it is select one element and then just click entire table. And now if I say, for example, deferred, it'll pop up a message asking me if I want to do everything for all rows in all pages. And there's only one page here in this simple example. But for all pages of the wasync reset flops table, I can say yes. Then that entire table now appears in a deferred bucket. You'll notice as well that I might decide that I want to annotate something here. So I might want to say that I want to add some additional information. So I'm going to scroll over to the right here and say comments, and I might say order to examine, and I might sort of basically apply that to all of those elements. If I then try to move to somewhere else, it's got these in red because it's basically said I've made a change. If I try to move somewhere else, it says the table's got uncommitted data. Do you want to put it into the database? So this makes sure that the user keeps track of any changes. And I can say commit here, and it'll then commit it to the database. Now, if I go out of iDebug, I'm just going to exit. Let's save the changes. If I go back into iDebug now, you'll notice that all of those previous elements of work, the to be fixed, the deferred, the waived, all still remain in effect. And although it's possible to erase all of those changes and go back to the beginning, by default, the Erase All tab is switched off. This is to prevent you accidentally deleting work. There is a tickle variable within the tool that enables this button to be switched on. And then when that's switched on, you can erase all the commits that you've made to the database to go back to the original immediately after Meridian terminates view of the design. Let's look at one other thing. Let's look at the control, for example. So here we've got controls. It's labeling the sync depth for different depths. And what I can do is I can actually click on something here, and then I can go to either up here to go schematic or source code, or I can right click and again do view and again do schematic, source, etc. So I'm just going to go by the main GUI here and go schematic. And this will pull up the original design, and you'll notice that there are certain things that are with dashed lines in them. The dashed lines you can double click on to expand and add additional elements if there are additional elements. You can click on any outputs and expand the overall schematic quite quickly. If you look at the total original view, this is the full schematic of this tiny block that I've got here that shows you a particular element of it. But you can quickly arrange things and do things such as deleting. If you want to delete various elements, can be done. But hovering over any element gives you the source code of that particular element. Here, for example, I can hover over here and you'll get again the source code. But if I want to, I can actually just click on the source code here and actually have a view with different scrollability through the overall design. The cone view is typically a very quick way of looking at things. The other thing you can do is you can zoom in to different elements. So I can zoom out and I can even go back. If it's a hierarchical view, I can go up through the hierarchy. But this allows you to very quickly see the original signal and the particular control in terms of the violation from the view. If I go back to iDebug here and I click on something else, for example, here and basically say I want to view the schematic, it'll again update the schematic with the appropriate view, again showing you the data point, showing you an environment element where this was specified an environment for data out. So this basically is what I wanted to show you for this particular short video. This just touches on some of the information. This is not actually read SDC. And please do contact anybody at Real Intent for support at realintent.com for any additional information. Thank you. That concludes this video.